All right, Barry, welcome to the storytelling show. Thank you for joining this conversation. And first of all, how are you feeling today before I do the big introduction?
I'm doing great. Nikolai, I want to let you know that I'm excited to be here with you. I love stories, and much of what I deal with is identifying what makes somebody or some product unique and telling that story. So, this should be a lot of fun.
Indeed. So I start off with what exactly impressed me, the guests that I'm inviting to this show, and you have a lot of experience with marketing, with rebranding and branding and telling, looking for the stories and the unique qualities of a certain product of a certain company and trying to expand on this. You have worked with a lot of names, big famous names such as Harley-Davidson, such as Audi, such as McLaren. Actually, today I did a walk through the center of the city of Sofia, and one of the bars had those McLaren labels outside on the store, and I was just thinking, oh, great, I have actually conversation with one of the people involved in this brand. So I was very excited to join this conversation. And again, thanks. One thing that I actually wanted to start off, so doing my research, doing my homework, I noticed that one of the first experience you have listed on LinkedIn is as a USP worker and uploader, downloader of stocks, etc. And after this, you've started building your agency, your company. And for the hero structure, we know that every big legend, every big hero starts with a humble beginning. Can you walk me and my audience through your humble beginnings and through these moments of working at USP or probably other companies as well?
I would not call myself a hero, but I did have humble beginnings. I started out in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, my hometown. That's where my family was when I grew up. I was a pretty normal kid, except I really loved mathematics. I was taught algebra at the age of 3 years old by my dad. And when I was in second grade, I got kicked out of school because I was using algebra in class, and the teacher thought that was
Okay.
bad. You should not be doing that. It's going to turn you into a lopsided individual. So, what happened is I started to find that I had a love for music. I learned how to play clarinet. I then thought, hey, I want to play rock music because I thought the Beatles were really cool. I wanted to be like them. So I learned how to play drums. And then I wanted to write songs, and you can't write songs on drums. So I learned how to play keyboards. Got a little band together with my brother. I played keyboards and drums, which is not easy to do at the same time, as well as sung. And I started a creative life for myself. I started writing songs, I started recording them. As I got a little older, I joined bands, and I was the leader of a number of bands. And some of the songs were really good. They were on the radio. We backed up some famous people. And I didn't realize at the time, Nikolai, but that was the beginning of me running a business, a small business, because a band is a small business. In my case, you had three or four guys, and you had to make sure each of the guys showed up for work, and you had to make sure they were working or producing, let's say, their best work and doing what they did best, and you didn't want to put them in an area where they couldn't perform. Then you have to go out and play that music for people. Well, that's called the customer experience. So you have to go do that, and then you got to get more of those. That's called sales. And I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but I literally was becoming an entrepreneur. And that's what brought me to where I am today, because as time went on, I then started a business and ran the business like a rock band. So I came from humble beginnings, middle class, uh, really loved music, and eventually I went into the field of marketing, advertising, and training.
It is funny how you mentioned you as well the previous guests that I spoke to are also have this musical foundation, and uh, I love the comparison that running a band is very similar, like running a company, running a team. You also mentioned it in one of the previous episodes that you spoke in, and I have a couple of questions, two questions that pop out here. First of all, you started with the algebra, and this is very drastic transition from something so technical, so mechanical, to something so creative. And I love people who can actually mix both and actually take advantage of those both their sides of the brain. Do you remember this transition for you? And did you continue using algebra for the musical experiences as well?
Well, I thought what was interesting was I loved numbers because you could figure out if you were right or wrong.
Yeah.
English kind of worried me because, I didn't know, is it really an adjective or adverb? And boy, with math, I love the fact that I could figure out if I was right or wrong. So once I'd get something figured out, I would then check it and I go, okay, I'm right. And it was such a relief to me. As far as music and mathematics, they're very closely related because, for instance, on the keyboard, the notes are a certain interval apart. And when you create chords, there are certain mathematic equations, you could call it, that create a major chord or could create a minor chord or diminished or seventh chord or whatever. So it is very related, and I think that helped me. One thing from my personality, whenever I've done personality tests, I do have one strange quirk, and that is I am very evenly divided between analytical and creative. And it sounds really great, but it adds a lot of tension because I can see things very logically. And then I can see things really creatively and emotionally. And it doesn't work inside my brain very good sometimes. Sometimes I just go, God, what should I do? It makes me um, indecisive, or at least gives anxiety to me because I'm going, God, I can see us doing this way. Well, I can see us doing that way. So it is a little different. But I think in general, it has helped me, this weird balance in my brain, to understand a wide range of people. So I really understand engineers. I really get them. I think they're great. I'm not an engineer. My father was. But I also understand really emotional, creative people that are maybe not so technical and, maybe not so analytical, let's say. And I get it. So it's helped me dealing with people because I'm right in there with them. And I could jump in the pool with one of them being analytical and jump in a different pool with the other being crazy creative. So it's helped me in my business, I think, and it's helped me relate to people because, you know, we're all different, and
Yeah.
it's allowed me to appreciate the difference in people without judging it.
But now I also think about it that it must it must serve you as a bridge between those two audiences. Like not only that you tap in with the creatives and then after this tap in with the engineers, but you can actually connect both of those audiences and help them see each of their own perspectives. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it helps me because I have to run a company, and if I try to make everybody think like me, they're going to be pretty miserable, and so would I be. But I think you just have to realize, and again, it goes back to my band days, but
Yeah.
if you have a guitarist and he's tremendous, but he's not a great lead singer, don't force him to be a lead singer. And if you have a lead singer, but he's not a great guitarist, don't force him to play lead guitar. Look at what they do well and celebrate that, honor it. So that's what's helped me.
Fair enough. Obviously there are a lot of questions that pop up in my head, like, okay, how do you figure out what's best for how do you figure out the talents of your team members in the company? How do you then map it out to benefit the big picture? But I want to take it back a little bit. We started with the humble beginnings. You mentioned you were running a band, which in its own brand. You start going on gigs. You start promoting yourself. What when did you realize that okay, this marketing and sales is something that you're interested in, you're good at it, and you want to actually take it up on the next level and serve other people with those services that you provide?
That's a great question. I grew up not wanting to be in business and not wanting to sell. So as I got into the band world, I guess what started to occur to me was, I'm doing that in the band. I have to go out and make sure we're going to get hired. The band has a brand, so we have to make sure what we're doing is us. We're not trying to imitate other people. So I think that was good. I did go through a tragedy in my life when I was in my late 20s, and that was when I lost my father. He passed away from an illness when he was 63 years old. And it was a wake-up call for me because I had to really come to grips with the fact that, he didn't live forever. I'm not going to live forever. So what do I want to do? Because I don't know if I have one more second left or if I have maybe 30 years left. I have no idea. And that's when I decided I was going to concentrate on a business because I thought it was fair. It was something where if I worked really hard, I could do pretty well. And I was inspired to do it. I was scared to do it. And that's what launched my business. I still played a little bit of music here or there, but I gave up on the music dream and I started really focusing on business. As far as selling, I was still terrible at selling. So I reached out and I found a person who would help me, who was the best salesperson in the area. I called him up. I had no idea who he was. He had no idea who I was. I just knew he was a great salesperson. And I said, hey, could I buy you lunch sometime? I hear you're the best salesperson in the area and I'm really terrible. And he said, yeah, let's have lunch today. So I went, today? He goes, yeah. He said, I'll see you in an hour over at this restaurant. I said, oh. And I asked him later, I said, why did you see me? And he said, because you know what? So few people ask me to help them. And you did. He said, you were humble. You wanted some assistance. And he said, I'm happy to do it. And to this day, he and I are still really, really good friends.
That's great. Like, I'm curious why not a lot of people reached out to him back in the days, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I guess sales as a process can be quite direct, quite unfiltered in some cases. So I assume those might be some of the reasons.
I think a little differently. I think the reason people don't reach out to somebody like that, well, I think there are several reasons. I think one is sometimes people don't want to humble themselves and say, look, you're really good at this and I'm
That's true.
not. Can you help me? I think sometimes we're intimidated and we assume that that person must be busy and doesn't want to talk to somebody like me. And both of those assumptions they're wrong and they hurt us, but they also hurt that individual because I'll tell you, I've learned from so many people in my career who gave me advice, who guided me on things that, I really appreciated. And I know that they liked to be able to be in that position. And I urge anybody, young or old, especially young, to go and find these old people who know a lot. And when I said this guy was a little older, he was probably 3 years older than me. He was he was not some 80-year-old man. He was just a few years older than me. I felt he was 10 years older, but that's just because he was more successful. But he helped me out of the goodness of his heart, and we became personal friends.
Yeah, you're completely right, especially in the last part. It doesn't matter that much if it's 3 years older or even 3 years younger. It depends more on the experience and what they've been through, right?
Mm-hmm.
So something else that I want to focus on right now, still on the transition from the musical band to building your own company, starting and building your own company. Now, when I think about, I'm a hip hop head, and when I think about one the my most favorite albums, they portray a story from the first to the last song of the album. There's some kind of story. What are the lessons, what are the insights that you took from your musical experience into now starting and running your company?
I took from writing songs that what's really important is you've got to write it with some level of inspiration. If you just try to be formulaic and just put something together that's typical and standard, you can do it, but it's not going to stop somebody in their tracks and have them go, wait a minute, I got to listen to this. And I think it's the same way in creating an idea for marketing. When my company creates something for a client, and let's say they come, my team comes to me and they say, hey, I want to show you this or this or that. If it's really good, and often my team does that kind of work, I mean, it's amazing. I actually lose touch of time for a moment. I'm enveloped in it. I'm looking at it. I'm going, oh my gosh, that's great. And I may turn to the clock on the wall and go, my gosh, it's been 30 minutes. I've been looking at this with you guys. That's the same way I looked at music. It's how I look at when you create something. I've created thousands of ideas. Could be songs, could be logos, could be slogans, could be stories, whatever it is. And I judge them by the fact or not the fact that somebody loses sense of time and they're paying attention to it and they show an emotion. They are uplifted. And a lot of times people think that sounds light. It's like, oh, come on. I'm not saying it's light. If you create an idea for marketing, if you create a song, if you have a story and you tell somebody the story behind what you do, and you can see them physically and emotionally uplifted, you've got a pretty interesting story there. If you tell them a story and it sounds like everybody else's story and it's boring and it's, it's proper and typical, but it's not interesting, they're going to slump, they're going to lose interest, they're going to pick their cell phone up and start looking at it, they're going to have their eyes all over the room, they're just not going to pay attention to you. So I think that's what it is. You can tell if you pay attention to others, if you have an interesting idea or story, because when you share it, if somebody's really listening and they're getting it, you should feel it and see it.
Now, you, if I may say, you have this kind of a clutch, meaning that your character and your mindset, as you mentioned, you're very good at the technical thinking, but also very good at going on the creative side. And you mentioned that a great story, and I agree about this. The great story must uplift you, must get you out of the room, out of the space that you're currently in. But for me, as a more technical person, and I already mentioned in the beginning, I follow the hero's journey, the framework, the formula that we all have. How how can a more technical person actually identify if it's inspiring enough, or how to draw the inspiration needed to breathe life in those campaigns?
I think a technical person can do a couple of things. Number one, he or she should look at discovering what makes the topic you're talking about unique. So it could be your company, it could be, again, a song or your band, whatever. So you discover it. You don't try to create it. You look at those one or two things that really are unique. Like with my company, when I talk to a new client, I say, look, we focus on one word, differentiation. And differentiation is a tough word. It's 6 syllables. It's 15 letters. Half the people can't even pronounce it. And people start to smile. And I go, but we have to not create our differentiation. We discover it because it's already there. So when I start to tell that story, I can tell if somebody's kind of going, oh, wow, okay. So I think the technical person should identify that uniqueness. And also, as you're sharing the story, be very, very cognizant of the words you use, because in our language in the United States, our English language, we have over 200,000 words, and I'm sure your language is similar. Most people use like 10 of those words when they describe their product or their company. They use value, selection, quality, price, all these things. And you know what? Nobody listens. So, as a technical person, pay attention to those words. One company I worked with that was a technical company was in discussions with me, and we were talking about, well, what makes you unique in all this? And, I was expecting them to say, well, we make high quality work. It's like, okay, yeah. But one of them said, rigor. And I said, what? And he said, rigor. I said, oh my gosh. I mean, I felt the earth shake. I said, that's awesome. And he said, really? I go, yeah. I said, who else says one of their core values is rigor? That determination to do it the right way and never give up. And I thought, oh my gosh. So I say, technical person, pay attention technically to the words you use. Are we high quality or do we have rigor? And you go, rigor? That's interesting. That's what I think. So I think, look at what you do that is different. Choose the words that really honor the uniqueness. Don't use the same words everybody else does. Just get away from, we have 200,000 words to choose from. Let's use a few unique ones. That's why I use differentiation. And like I said, I have some people at my company that cannot pronounce the word. So you think, Barry, that is not a good word for you. But, I want to literally own that word with my clients and with my coworkers and suppliers. I want them, if somebody says we need to differentiate, I want them, wait a minute, you got to talk to Barry's group. That's what they do. They differentiate, as opposed to, oh, they do branding. Well,
Yep.
That's typical. Yeah, oh, I do branding. Okay, yeah, great. We differentiate.
A couple of things here I want to mention. First of all, it is very important what you're saying to pick. Uh, every brand has to pick their words, especially nowadays when I'm not sure what percentage, but a huge percentage of the content we have on the internet is created by ChatGPT or any other kind of language model, and we see the same combination over and over. In the dynamic world, in the high value services of yada yada yada. So it reminded me of a brief exercise I learned back in my marketing courses back in the days. A simple table. In one column you have adjectives, in the other column you have the nouns, and the third you have the verbs. Figure out the most common words that are relevant to your brand and try to use them as often as possible in your content. And more, as you mentioned, you are now narrowing it down to one word and trying to own these words. Which leads me to the next point is actually, in order to own this word, I'm sure that probably another marketing agency or another kind of brand have tried to use either differentiate or rigor, but they weren't consistent enough with it and it failed. When it's kind of like a market share of words and you have to fight for it over and over again with your content and with your work. Am I on the right track here?
Yeah, you don't look for words that are common that everybody uses. And you also don't look for words that your competitors are using and say, wait a minute, I want to use those too. You look for the words that authentically and genuinely describe what you do. So in the case of the company I was talking about, rigor, that's them. Their competitors, yeah, they could use the word, but this company, it's like, well, we have rigor. And then they would go through all the things they did to make sure their product was in great shape, all the testing, all the processes they went through. I mean, you go, oh my gosh, that is rigorous. And that's what I'm saying. We can copy the words of somebody else, which happens, all the time. But if we're going to be meaningful, pick a few that really focus on what you do. And, imagine being bold enough to say, look, Nico, I'm Nico. I focus on one thing. I focus on blank. And then being quiet for a moment, and people are going to go, that's it? You go, yep, that's my focus. And that's what I do with differentiation. I focus on differentiation. And I'm inspired by it. I can tell stories about it. I can tell hundreds of stories about it. I can explain it. I can share how to improve your differentiation, that's what I do. And can my competitors try to do it? Yeah, some of them actually try to take those words that I have and go do it. But, they just take the words and they don't really have the feel or the emotion or the commitment behind them. And, they may put them out in a newsletter and take some quotes right from me, but claim they did them. And I'm going, they're trying. They are impressed with what we're doing, but it's going to fall off the page. Nobody's going to care because it's not really coming from them. Now, that's one thing too, Nico. In music, if you think of your favorite singers, if a singer sings a song and you are mesmerized by it, you love it because he or she does it, and you go, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's really a performance. That's differentiation. That person did it. Okay. You could hear the same song by somebody else and go, oh my gosh, I hate the way that guy sings that song. And that's the point. When we're talking about what is our story, if the person thinks, oh my gosh, that is so boring, I hear that from everybody, then all you are is what we would call a cover band. You're just playing a song that some famous band did really well, and you're doing it really miserably. And nobody really wants to hear you do it. And they know you're just mimicking the band that really did it well. What I want to be is I want to be the original. I want to be the one that does it with the feeling, that does it with authenticity. And that's what we have to do, technical people or non-technical people. We've got to have that authenticity. People have to feel, that's got to be genuine. People have to feel that, my gosh, Nico's crazy about this. He's really excited about this. Boy, he's really determined. And if that's the case, you have a chance to influence people.
I want to continue on the musical note here. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go through all the questions that I want to ask you, but you have a lot of experience and a lot of insights that I just want to pull on the thread. Now, I heard you say in one of the episodes that finding this differentiation is pretty much like similar to when the musician hits the guitar in their hands and they hit this note with their fingers and they struck this specific combination of notes and they hear this unique sound and they continue on this uniqueness. When you and your team walk in the room with one of your clients, and especially I want to focus on clients that are very technical. You mentioned that you work with a lot of companies in such technical industries. So you walk into their company, into their factory, whatever the case is. How do you find this unique combination? How do you ask the client to strike the guitar in a different way than the others?
We walk into the facility and we get a tour. In the case of, let's say, if it's a manufacturer, a tour of the facility with their manufacturing leader and their design leader. And we tell them, start from scratch. Tell us every single thing you're doing, including things you're bored with and you think everybody should know you're doing. And they start to describe things. And in many cases, we go, okay, now you just said something interesting. Does everybody else in your industry do it? Almost every time we hear, I don't know if they do or not. We go, okay, this could be unique. And we find these unique processes, activities, whatever, that they are doing. And we list them. Now, it might be 10 of them or 15. So we're not going to end up saying you have 15 differentiators. We're normally going to have 3 or 4, let's say. But we're going to make a list, and we're going to really test them. We're going to go through them. We're going to have them explained to us. We're going to make sure that once we get that list, we're going to look at their competition and see, does anybody do exactly that? But we then will find, and we have gone through 150 companies looking for differentiation, and we have always found it. So we're batting 1,000. We're 150 out of 150 to find differentiation. The thing that's really important for me to share with your group is that Differentiation is exactly that. It's uniqueness or distinctiveness. It is not superiority, because you may not be superior. So you mentioned some of our clients. We work with Harley-Davidson, which is a phenomenal motorcycle. They are the iconic motorcycle worldwide, and they are brilliant, wonderful, very passionate people. If you talk to their leadership, they will not say we are superior in every area. They won't say that. They're too smart. They know better than that. But they will say nobody offers an experience like us. Nobody offers a more beautiful design than us. Nobody offers a better sound for their engine than us, and they can go on that. But if somebody says, well, what about, BMW motorcycles? They would not say, oh, those are inferior. They would say, oh, they're great too. They're great, but they're not us. And if you want a great experience that's a brother or sisterhood, you've got to come to Harley-Davidson. Now, if you want a very technical bike that's made to exacting standards, you might look at a BMW, because those are great bikes too. So what we do is we really try to stress with our clients that it's not superiority, it's uniqueness. It's the difference between a Macintosh computer, an iMac, let's say, and a PC, just your standard PC. You can get into arguments, hopefully good-natured one, as far as one is better than the other. But the truth is, it depends on what you need them for and what your purpose is. They're both potentially very well made. They're just different, and they're for different people. But you still need to honor and celebrate their distinctiveness.
I just want to recap this insight here that especially in competition in products like these that you mentioned, superiority is not an advantage, because you must know your audience. There are certain type of motor riders that would prefer Harley Davidson, and they would rather gather in a group and drive their Harleys on the motorway and have this Harley Davidson experience, which is much different than the people who would enjoy more Kawasaki or BMW motors, and pretty much the same when comparing standard PCs with Apple's computers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I want to recap here again that superiority, as you mentioned, is not definitely the winning factor for a great brand. It's differentiation, it's finding your uniqueness and who you can attract with this uniqueness, correct?
Right. That is exactly right. The superiority situation is, if I say my product's the best and you say yours is the best, so what? But if I can describe what we do with my product and why we do it, and then you describe why you do what you do with your product, then a person can make a decision and go, I kind of like how Nico goes about that. Okay, it doesn't mean what I'm doing isn't good. It's just they get why you're doing it. And they go, okay, I like that. And that's how, I'm kind of simplifying it, but that's how it can really come down to it. We have to show personality with these brands and products that we're producing.
The picture that was painted in my head when you said this, when two people start arguing who is superior than the other, I see two kids on the playground. No, I'm better at this than you. No, I'm better than that. And the other situation is when two mature people, intellectual people, have a different opinion on one certain topic. They tell their point of views, and both of them go, yeah, you might be right, you have a point there. I still think that my arguments are also correct. That doesn't mean that you are not correct, but we're looking at the same thing in two different ways. And that is the mature way to go.
It is, and that's well said. And it works in politics. It works in buying products. And again, like you put it very well, if it's two kids on the playground saying I'm the best, it's like, okay, so what? Nobody's going to listen. So a more mature approach is what we're talking about today, and that is identifying it, discovering it. Discover what you've been doing that is really good, but you really haven't been focusing on sharing that story, and go, now, wait a minute. There's probably a reason that people buy from me and my company, And this differentiation must be valuable. So let's make sure we don't change it, we don't get rid of it, and let's leverage it. Let's celebrate it.
Nice. I want to focus a little bit, change the focus on get back to the heroes framework, because if I go on with the methods that you're using and the insights that you're using, it should be for another episode that I'll be very happy to record. But the question that I have in my head is like, when you're working with a lot of companies, and when, especially in the younger days of building this company, now who are the mentors, or where do you look for advice to know what to do next and know what to look to differentiate yourself from the other competitors and the other agencies that say, okay, I can do branding better than you?
Well, if I give advice to the audience, my advice is to look for your differentiation by doing a few things. Talk to your customers and ask them, what do they want you to never change? So instead of, well, what should you change? Well, you'll hear things, make it cheaper, make it faster. Okay, you'll hear that. Okay, what should we not change? So if it's a Macintosh, one of the computers that Apple creates, I'm sure you would talk to creative people, say, don't change how great it is for me to do animation or me to do graphic arts. You'd hear that. Don't change that. It's great. So look for what you do that your customers want you to make sure you never stop doing. That's the most important question. Once you determine that, and you talk to many customers and maybe some of your employees and some of your suppliers and some people in your community, and you listen to this, you're not going to have 150 answers. You're going to have like 4 that you hear all the time. Well, congratulations, you're finding your differentiation, because some of those or all of those are going to be your differentiation. Then the next step I would recommend anybody to do is, then if you can't bring in an outside company, then walk into your company or observe your company or process as open as you can, as open as you can be, and look at what might be unique. Look at, is there, for instance, is there a product that you're building that costs a little extra money than your competitors, but it's worth it for you? You're spending a little bit more money because you just want to make it perfect. Okay, what is that thing you're doing? Is there an ingredient in your product that you're paying a little extra for because you like the taste of it? If you're a bread company, as an example, look at that. Is there a process? So this is great for technical people, Nico. Is there a process you have that takes extra steps, and you take it and you do it, but your competitors don't? You go those extra 2 or 3 steps. Okay, that could be a differentiator. Look for where you spend more money or you spend more time, because probably you're doing it for a good reason. Once you look at those, the best thing you can do is then really step back for a moment, preferably with your team, and say, okay, this is what we found. Let's have some fun. Let's look at this. And then after you do it, and I try to have fun with this, is you want to name it. You don't want to say, hey, this is our process. This is us being us. Name it. I like to say this, but those of us who have children don't have child 1, child 2, and child 3. We name our children, and we tell people why we named our children that. And then we tell a little story about our child. Well, that's how we look at our differentiators. We need to name them, and we need to say, here's why we named them this. And then we have to say, and here's a story behind them. And that's what we do. So if you can do that, and remember earlier in the show, we talked about, let's use some special words that are not commonplace words. Let's avoid cliches. If we can do that, I think you're going to be way ahead of your competition. So if I go recap it, identify what your customers, your people say that you need to keep doing and you should never change. Identify what that is. All right. Identify anything you're taking a few extra steps or paying a little bit more money to go produce behind the scenes because you want it just right. And then once you determine the top 2 or 3 of them, name them. And then the best step is at the very end, before you then launch it to the world, launch it to the most important people, your employees, the people who build it, the people who have devised it, designed it. Celebrate with them. Let them know how important they are in this so they become your army going out into the world. So if somebody says, hey, Nico, what's this thing about this product you're doing? You say, oh, yeah, let me tell you about it. And you're all excited. That's what you want your people to do, whether you have one person working for you or 16,305 people. It doesn't really matter.
This is something that impressed me in one of the episodes I heard with you, and I love that you are very strong about this. Sell the process first to your employees. They are the people, they are doing it. Most of the time, they are the ones who built it, and if they cannot even talk about it openly and get excited about it openly, don't expect the audience and the class to also get excited and buy it. So very important that you brought it up, and thank you, Barry, for this. I wanted to, I know that we have limited time, so I want to close off with one of the questions that I always ask my guests. Now, there were two main keywords in our conversation: inspiration and story. Obviously, story, why not? I wanted to know, when you are in a difficult situation, when there are some certain scenarios where the inspiration or the answer doesn't come immediately, where do you draw inspiration, and what are the stories that you relate to, that you can use in your life to actually use for the clients as well?
I turn to human beings. And what we do is we have what we call a jam session. So we have a jam session. And I will be vulnerable just like I want our clients to be. And I'll go to my team. I'll go, hey, I've got this idea, but I'm just not happy with it. I'm not quite sure how to make it come to life. Can we do a jam session? Can we spend an hour together and let's just come up with 100 different ideas for this? Can we do it? And they'll go, yeah. And we jump in, and we always come up with ideas that could be good, because what we're doing is we're listening to each other. We're bouncing new ideas off each other. And we're also sharing that enthusiasm with each other. That's how I do it.
You thrive off the energy of other people and the stories of other people.
I'm always impressed. We were trying to name a company, and they did a lot of pipes, valves, and fittings. So they're called a PVF company, pipes, valves, and fittings. So a lot of people in the audience will go, boy, that sounds boring. But it's an exciting business, it's great. And we were trying to come up with, is it Pipe Master, is it whatever, who knows, some funny names. But one of our folks said, let's call it Venturi. And we went, what? Well, he had looked up that there is it's called an effect. There's the Venturi effect, that when water is rushing through pipes and it gets constricted, it increases in volume, et cetera. And I could go into details, but the point is, it's an effect. It's like gravity, okay? But nobody had been called Venturi. And we thought, my gosh, that's amazing. So we went to the client and they almost fell over. They went, oh my gosh, because they knew of the Venturi effect, but now they could own Venturi. And that's how we created that name. It was in a jam session. And we looked for what made that client unique, and that is they love pipes, valves, and fittings. Well, what's a better name than Venturi?
That's amazing. If I want to recap the whole conversation, and what I took from the conversation with you is, brands and companies should look for wanting that differentiates them from the competitors, but they should look at anything to find that one thing, meaning processes, approaches, like even specific assets or mindset into approaching the problem that they want to solve for their clients. Look for under rock and anything that you can find to find this one thing that differentiates you from the rest of it. It's a very difficult work indeed, and then focus on it, own it, and try to never change that word.
Right. And I think you said it really well. Don't try to create a brand new brand. Discover what you really are. And that's so much easier to live up to. And it's so much more inspiring.
Barry, this is amazing, a great conversation. And for sure, I can go on for another hour at least because I have here notes that I couldn't get to. But for example, the 5-step process that you have, you already mentioned some of it. But I don't want to hold you off anymore. I just want to ask you: is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience? Something that I didn't manage to ask you, but it is very important for you to share.
What's important to me is I want to inspire 1 million people worldwide with my message. I've been on 100 podcasts doing that over the last year, and they've been listened to in almost every continent. And I want people to understand the value of differentiation and celebrating it. So if they go to my website, which is barrylabov.com, we have a gift for anybody that listens to us on podcasts, and that is they can get the book for free virtually. We'll send a PDF. Or if they want it shipped to them in the United States, we'll ship it for just shipping and handling, a physical copy. And we're happy to do that. If anybody wants to reach out to me, go to LinkedIn and you can find me, and I'll be happy to talk to you. I always respond.
I can confirm the last one. We already connected on LinkedIn, so it was an amazing conversation. It was a great way to end my day, and I'm sure the audience will appreciate listening to you. Thanks a lot for the time, Barry, and talk to you soon.
Thank you, Nikki.